Hey folks, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. I am out in my living room area. My dogs are walking around and clicking and clacking on the floor, so I'm making some noise here. But I just wanted to provide a quick channel update for you all today. I recently did a video on questing fiction in tandem with my re-review of Albion's Legacy, the board game, the adventure board game based off of the King Arthur mythos and legends. And in that questing fiction video, I did just some brief recommendations on different types of questing fiction that I like. And one of the things I talked about is the desire to bring book reviews back to the channel. The very first review I did on the Dungeon Dive was actually a small book review, a game book. And when I started the Dungeon Dive, it was my desire to always incorporate books in some way in tandem with the coverage of board games and tabletop games and role-playing games. And that's just because I view these two different mediums in a similar way. Of course, my dogs just started playing like crazy. You know, it's hard for me to separate my love of the two just because they both scratch that itch in my mind for this way to be engaged with an interesting narrative. And they do that in different ways. In books you read and in tabletop games you interact. But I think the two are very similar. And I think about them in the same way. I think about them in tandem when I'm playing games. I think about books. When I think of books, I'm thinking about different games. And so I did some book reviews on the channel. I started the Sword and Sorcery saga on the channel. But at the time, I started thinking about separating the two, and I started a book channel, All Fiction is Fantasy, and come to find, like, just a lot of people didn't even know I did that, even though I mention it, and it's always in the description of the video, but I know people don't really read those. You know, I decided to separate them because YouTube doesn't really know what to do with mixed medium channels, and it doesn't know where to put them, and I thought it would help the channel, but I don't think it really did. The channel is still suffering in the same ways where subscribers are going up, but views aren't going up at the same rate. And so I still don't think, for some reason, YouTube doesn't know what to do with this channel or something, because there are newer channels that focus on the same games that I do that are just absolutely destroying the Dungeon Dive in reviews or in views. And so I'm bringing books back to the channel because I think it's one thing that really does separate the Dungeon Dive from other channels. No other board game channels that I know of really talk about fiction in the same ways that I do. And they don't incorporate reviews of fiction with board games. And so that was something that I always wanted to do. And I think I made a mistake separating the two out. And so I'm going to bring more book coverage back to the Dungeon Dive. Now, that doesn't mean that there's going to be a ton of book reviews on the Dungeon Dive because I rarely have the time to review books, but I just want to give myself that option on this channel because it is important to me. And I think that it is that really one of the main things that I offer that other board game and other tabletop channels do not offer. And so it's really important to me to bring the books back to the Dungeon Dive. Now, there won't be a ton of coverage of books. So for those of you who don't like books or don't care what I have to say about books, I mean, a lot of my subscribers don't seem to care about what I have to say about games either, especially lately. But there won't be a ton of stuff, but it'll just give me that option. And it will kind of give me the allowance. It'll give me permission to talk about books more on this channel. And that is something that I want to do. And it's something that I am going to do. You know, I guess views be damned because, yeah, just things aren't going very well with the channel. So I might as well just bring the books back. I mean, I would do music reviews on this channel if I thought I could. But that probably won't happen because music is my #1 top love of my life is music. And I listen to so much music, but I would have a harder time incorporating music into board games and fiction than I would books with tabletop games. And so, yeah, so you will be seeing a little bit more coverage of books on the channel. That's basically it. but it's not going to be like the Dungeon Dive is shifting to books only. I mean, you might see a dedicated book review maybe once every 2 months or something. If I just happen to read something amazing that I can connect to something with tabletop gaming in a way. I did want to also do 2 quick recommendations because 2 things that I've read in the last few months that I have absolutely loved. And the first of those is Aliens Failins, and that is by Scott Siegler. And man, this book is amazing. This might be my favorite thing in the entire Aliens universe, the entire Aliens saga is this book. This says that Atagena was an isolated world of medieval castles and rich cultures, vibrant until the demons rose and slaughtered 90% of the planet's population. Now that sounds a little weird for an Aliens book, and if you enjoyed that somewhat recent Predator movie, Prey, where it sets Predator in a historical setting in America, you might really, really enjoy this book if you haven't read it, because it takes the aliens and puts the aliens against a medieval civilization. Now, the medieval civilization is somewhat weird. It's almost kind of post-apocalyptic. It feels like maybe a little bit dystopian, but the people on this planet of Atagena, they live in these old castles, and the planet is overrun by xenomorphs, and they call them demons because they have no idea. They have no idea about space travel and things outside in the galaxy far, far away. They call them demons, and they have to send out these runners that run from one settlement to the next, gathering supplies and doing these trading missions with the other civilizations, trying not to get captured by the demons, the aliens. And there's a great twist in the book that kind of sets things up and connects it a little more to the alien universe. And there are great, great characters. The book is full of tension. What's really great about it is the characters constantly, or at least a subset of the characters, they constantly make good decisions. A lot of times in the aliens things that we enjoy, the drama is set up by characters making poor decisions, but that almost never happens in this book. And when it does, there is a fictional reason, there is a plot reason why. And yeah, this book is fantastic. The last third is so action-packed, but the action never draws on. It never gets kind of cumbersome or overbearing. You're not reading like tons and tons of description about people fighting, trading blows with each other. No, it's really good. It's very well written. It does kind of have a YA feel, and I think that's just because the characters are young. Most of the humans in this story are young because the chances of survival in this world are very low. And so they send these kids out, almost like Logan's Run, they send these kids out to do these missions because the kids are kind of dispensable. And, you know, you have to survive a certain number of runs before you get the privilege of being an adult in this society, an adult that gets to live in relative safety. But yeah, this book is awesome. I loved it. My buddy recommended this as a group read, and we read it, and all 3 of us loved it. It's fantastic. And another book that I recently finished for a group read with those same friends, and this was my very first David Gemmell or Gemmell. I've heard it pronounced both ways. I have always said Gemmell. And that is the first book of the Legends trilogy of Druss the Legend, and that is Against the Horde. And this is a book of a trilogy, and the other 2 are Waylander and also The King Beyond the Gate. And so this is the very first Gemmell book that I've ever read, and I loved it. Man, I have a hard time conveying how much I loved this book. And I'm kind of kicking myself for waiting for so long. Gemmell was just kind of a blind spot for me. I think a lot of that had to do with kind of the modern covers that I always saw, the editions that I always saw, just never looked very interesting. They always had kind of bad cover art, and they were kind of cheesy looking. But if you haven't read Gemmell and you want a book full of big heroic characters doing big heroic things, man, you will have a hard time finding a book better than Against the Horde. It's just great. Druss is this old man. Longtime viewers of the Dungeon Dive will know that I love books and I love things that feature old men or old people, old men and women doing things, kind of a last hurrah. You know, that's one of the reasons why I like that game Iron Helm so much, is because you are playing an old adventurer who is just going on one last mission to get what they need to retire in somewhat of to have a pleasant life, that last bit of gold that they might need to buy that cabin out in the woods. And in this book, Druss, the legend, the old man, he's already retired. He's already living out in the woods, but he gets drawn back in to one more big battle where he and a small band of warriors have to hold these walls around this castle in order to protect the people from this horde. Now, what's really interesting, one of the things this book does is it sets up its protagonist, the villain, to also be a man of honor. And the main protagonist in this book ends up being one of the most interesting antagonists I've ever read in a work of fiction. By the end of the book, I ended up feeling some empathy towards the enemies in this book, and the way that they plot everything and their desires make sense. And so that line between good and evil is really blurred in this book, and it does so to kind of set up this, it has something to say about politics and how warring societies have to kind of coexist and get along, and there's this ebb and flow over time. But this book was so much fun. There are so many great little characters. The last third of the book, I was a little afraid because of the big siege that happens. I thought it was going to be nonstop, just kind of action. And I don't typically like that kind of detailed action, but Gimel handles it with a great skill. It's told in a series of vignettes, and where we're kind of constantly bouncing from one point of view character or a point of view of a group of characters to another and what they're dealing with. Super good. There are all kinds of great kind of like raw speeches to get people fired up. There's one thing that I didn't like, and that has to do with two of the female characters that are introduced, and I think there are only 2 women in this book, so it's kind of lacking women, and that does happen in a lot of fantasy. But Gimel actually introduces 2 great female characters, and one of them is named Varai, and when she's introduced, she's just a firecracker. She was so cool, and she gets tangled up, and she ends up marrying this other character named Rek, and together, I imagine that they were going to fight together like husband and wife and be this great team. And Rek is like this great warrior. He's like a berserker or something. I think they call him a barzarkar or something like that. But at one point, Varai just kind of gets written out. She gets completely sidelined. And it was almost like Gimel didn't know what to do with her. And multiple times from about the halfway point, I kept asking myself while I was reading, where's Varai? What's Varai doing? What happened to Varai? Because she was such an interesting character. And it's a real disappointment for me because Gimel set her up to be awesome, and then he does absolutely nothing with her. And there was another character like that who I forgot her name, but she's like this great archer. And during the big kind of battle, they tell her to go be a nurse in the infirmary. And so it's like there was these 2 great female characters that just Gimel didn't know what to do with. And so he kind of sidelined them. And I would have liked to have seen them play a bigger part in what was going on. I don't think he did, but I would love if Gimel maybe wrote a story about Varai, because I would like to read just about her. But I ended up liking it so much that I kind of went right on and started Wolf in Shadow, which is part of his Stones of Power series. And this is a Weird West trilogy. And this is somewhat connected to also, I think, a duology that takes place in Rome, and also a duology that focuses on King Arthur. And so we have Rome, King Arthur, and a Weird West, all part of this series, all revolving around these Stones of Power. And man, this book is amazing as well. In Against the Horde, there are these warrior monks, these magical warrior monks, and they are so cool. And there is kind of that focus on religion in Wolf and Shadow. Now, this was originally published as The Jerusalem Man. And so this is all about this kind of wandering mystical cowboy who is searching for the fabled city of Jerusalem. And this starts off really well. It has a great weird Western feeling. It does remind me a lot of a book that I have discussed on the channel before called The Merkaba Rider, which is another Weird West with Jewish kind of folklore mixed in. I don't know why I have two series that are like that, Weird West series with Jewish folklore, but it just makes sense. And yeah, Wolf and Shadow, this has been great so far. I don't know if I like it as much as the first Legends book, but I'm liking it enough to continue reading, and enough to continue reading Gemmel. And yeah, he's a good writer. Not a great prose stylist by any stretch of the imagination, but I love his characters, and he just handles things with a kind of an effortless way. Against the Horde was effortlessly fun. It was, I just kept wanting to turn the page. Every time I put it down, I was thinking about the book, and I was thinking about what happens next. I can't wait to get back to read this. So I am also really looking forward to reading the other of the Legends series. Now his series are kind of weird. He jumped around a lot throughout his life. He would work on one, then work on another, then return to one. I think in the Legends books, hundreds of years pass in between the books, so you kind of don't really need to read them in any order. If you see a Gemmel book out in the wild and you haven't read them yet, just maybe just pick it up and start reading and I don't know, see what happens, see how lost you are. I can't imagine being lost. You know, I don't really feel the need to read the previous Stones of Power books because I think this does a great job of setting it up, even though this is like book 4 or 5 in the series. But yeah, this is fantastic. This is the Stones of Power series, and the Legends trilogy is part of the Draenei series. And I'm not sure how connected the Draenei series books are. I know there is a book that does focus on a younger Druss. Probably there was this great conflict that he was involved in, some standoff at some bridge where he was this great warrior, and that kind of established him as this legendary figure in this land of Draenei. But yeah, so those were just 2 really quick, I guess kind of 3 recommendations. Aliens, Failins, fantastic, and Against the Horde, very, very good, fantastic also. Both of these were kind of some highlights of the last few months of reading, and I'm hoping that Wolf and Shadow ends up being a highlight as well. So, all right, so some of you will be happy to see some book reviews, some book content back on the channel. God, I hate that word content. Some book episodes. I try to never say content. I hate it so much. Episodes. I like to call my stuff episodes. I'm not just shoveling content for people to consume. That just stuff kind of sends a shiver up my spine when I hear people call stuff content. But but yes, I will be doing some more episodes on books, and as the things provide, as I find relationships and ways to tangentially relate games to books, I am giving myself permission to do that more as well. So I know that will make some of you happy. It'll probably make some of you mad, but hey, what can I do? I have to be happy with this channel on a personal level. And if I'm happy on a personal level, then I think the episodes, the things I make will be better for it. So just a quick update for you all today. I hope you enjoyed it. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.